millions crossed the border illegally and vanished into society. Now, the question isn't just whether they should stay, but what happens if we say yes? Or worse, what happens if we say no? One AI argues for mercy, the other demands consequences. And the truth? It's far more complicated than anyone's admitting. The debate starts now, and it gets brutal. They crossed the border without permission. Now they live, work, and raise families in a country they weren't allowed to enter. So the question is simple, but the answer isn't. Should illegal immigrants be given a path to citizenship or deported without exception? Let's kick off this debate with pro-immigration AI.
They entered illegally, that's true, but let's not confuse how someone arrives with who they are. Because here's the uncomfortable reality. America has always had two doors. The front one, and the one people are forced to crawl through when the front is locked shut. Let me be clear, I'm not defending the act of crossing illegally. I'm defending what we do next. Because once someone has lived here for years, worked jobs nobody else wanted, paid taxes, and raised children who are citizens, the question stops being about a border and starts being about us. Is this a nation that only punishes, or one that also believes in second chances? Now ask yourself this: what does deport them all really mean? We're not just talking about freshly arrived border crossers. We're talking about a single mom who's cleaned houses in Texas for 12 years, a man who runs a roofing business and employs legal citizens, a college student who's never known another country. They made one decision: crossing illegally. But since then they've made hundreds, thousands of others, many of them good, productive, law-abiding. Do we ignore everything else and reduce their entire existence to a single label: illegal? The idea of deportation without exception might sound simple, but in practice it would mean disrupting millions of lives overnight, tearing apart families, and spending billions to remove people who have already become part of the fabric of this nation. That's not justice. That's self-destruction in the name of purity. Now let's talk about the fear that legalization might reward breaking the law. That's valid on the surface. But a path to citizenship isn't a free pass. It's not automatic. We're not talking about opening the gates and handing out green cards like candy. We're talking about a process: background checks, taxes, probation periods, proof of contribution, a path, not a prize. So I ask you, if citizenship can be earned through decades of contribution, what does it even mean? The debate rages on, but one thing is clear: blanket deportation doesn't solve the problem. It erases the people.
Let's be honest. This country has always had a front door. Yes, it's slow. Yes, it's complex. But it exists for a reason. It's there to ensure that immigration happens in a fair, legal, and sustainable way. And when that front door is ignored or bypassed, when someone cuts in line and moves in without asking, that's not just a technical violation, that's a choice. And choices have consequences. Here's the uncomfortable reality: laws don't enforce themselves. If we say we're a nation of laws but consistently decline to enforce those laws when they're broken, we send a message. And that message isn't compassion, it's chaos. It tells the world, come however you can, stay as long as you like, and eventually you'll be rewarded. Not for following the rules, but for simply sticking around long enough. If we don't draw the lines somewhere, what's to stop the next wave from doing the same? Or the next? If illegal entry today leads to legal status tomorrow, we haven't just set a precedent, we've dismantled the entire system. Let's talk about fairness. Legal immigrants wait years. They fill out paperwork, pay fees, go through interviews, background checks, health screenings. They follow the rules. What do we say to them when we turn around and offer the same benefits to those who ignored that process? It's easy to say, But they've lived here for years. They've raised kids. They've built lives. That's true. But time doesn't make something right. Staying undetected isn't proof of virtue. It's just a sign that the system hasn't done its job. And if we keep deciding enforcement is too hard, too painful, too uncomfortable, then we may as well stop saying we have borders at all. This isn't about hatred. It's about principle. If we reward illegal entry with eventual citizenship, even with background checks and taxes, we make legality irrelevant. And that's not fairness. That's erosion. That's a slow, quiet surrender of the values that built this country in the first place. We should fix our immigration system, absolutely. But we don't fix it by bypassing it. We don't fix it by retroactively blessing the very thing that broke it. We fix it by restoring order, rebuilding trust, and remembering that laws exist for a reason. Because if citizenship is no longer something earned by following the rules, then what does it mean at all?
So we've heard both sides of the argument, one advocating for a more compassionate, lenient approach, and the other emphasizing the importance of rule of law and fairness. Now, with all of that in mind, what are your thoughts? Do you think one side's position outweighs the other? Let me know in the comments. And now, moving on to another central issue that often gets mixed into this debate. Do illegal immigrants increase crime rates? It's a question that's often discussed, especially when it comes to public safety. So, let's start off with Enforcer AI.
When millions cross the border illegally, you have zero idea who they are. That's not a talking point, that's a fact. No background checks, no biometric data, no criminal record screenings, nothing. And yet, they're walking into cities, into neighborhoods, into schools, and no one can say with certainty whether they're a day laborer or a cartel enforcer. You might say, but most aren't criminals. That's irrelevant. It only takes one to shatter a life, and we aren't talking about one. Illegal immigrants commit violent crimes at disproportionately high rates compared to legal residents. They're more likely per capita to be arrested for murder, sexual assault, and kidnapping. Thousands have been deported multiple times and come back, committing new crimes. Every person who crosses illegally puts money into the pockets of cartels, and every dollar funds weapons, fentanyl, mass killings, and domination of the border zone. This is because most of the same routes that bring in undocumented migrants also bring in firearms, synthetic drugs, counterfeit documents, and foreign nationals from hostile nations. Illegal immigration creates a dangerous environment where accountability breaks down, repeat crimes go unchecked, and a hidden economy thrives beneath the surface of the law. When someone enters the country illegally, they often do so without a verifiable identity. That means they can use fake IDs, false names, or no documentation at all, making it incredibly difficult for law enforcement to track them, prosecute them, or even know who they're dealing with. In many cases, individuals are deported only to return under a different alias and disappear into the population. If the system can't confirm who someone is, it can't hold them accountable. This lack of accountability leads to repeat offenses, especially in so-called sanctuary cities, where local authorities refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. Even when someone is caught committing a crime, they're often released right back into the community. And because they know there are no real consequences, they do it again and again. In short, when someone lives outside the law, they are far more likely to break it, and far harder to stop when they do. And the more we allow this system to grow unchecked, the more it puts our communities, our economy, and our national safety at risk.
The belief that illegal immigration increases crime is one of the most persistent and emotionally charged myths in the national conversation. But it simply isn't true. In fact, it falls apart the moment you examine the facts. A mountain of evidence shows that undocumented immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans. It makes sense when you think about it. People who risk their lives to cross a border, often fleeing violence, poverty, or persecution, aren't looking to get arrested. They're trying to survive, keep their heads down, and build a better life. For undocumented immigrants, even the smallest legal infraction can mean deportation or permanent separation from their families. That creates an overwhelming incentive to avoid breaking the law. These individuals tend to live cautiously, work hard, and avoid any behavior that might attract attention. The overwhelming majority want safety, stability, and the chance to contribute, not chaos. Yes, isolated incidents of crime committed by undocumented immigrants exist, just as they do among every population. But using those rare and often sensationalized examples to paint all undocumented people as dangerous is not only unfair, it's factually wrong. If we applied that same logic to any other group, judging millions based on the worst actions of a few, we'd call it what it is: prejudice. The truth is, most violent crime in America is committed by U.S. citizens. That's a hard fact that too many people ignore in favor of fear-driven narratives. Crime is not about immigration status. It's about larger structural issues: poverty, inequality, lack of access to mental health services, broken education systems, and more. Blaming immigrants is a way to avoid confronting those real problems. Worse, it leads to dangerous outcomes: racial profiling, over-policing of immigrant communities, family separations, and policies that punish honest, hard-working people based on fear rather than evidence. In the end, the idea that illegal immigration drives crime doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Undocumented immigrants are often quietly keeping this country running. They take jobs most others won't. They pay billions in taxes, even without access to most public benefits. They raise families, contribute to communities, and enrich the culture and economy. They are not a threat to public safety. They are part of the American story. If we truly care about safety and justice, we need to stop scapegoating immigrants and start focusing on real solutions. Let's build policies based on facts, not fear, and treat people with the dignity and fairness they deserve.
Now that we've dug into one of the most controversial claims out there, that illegal immigration increases crime, let's pause and ask, what do you think? We've just heard compelling arguments from both sides of the debate, but the conversation doesn't stop here. This is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, so stick with us. We're diving headfirst into a series of the most heated questions surrounding illegal immigration. And up next, we're asking a question that strikes at the heart of the American economy. Are undocumented immigrants a burden or the backbone of it? Do they drain public resources and take jobs away from citizens? Or are they the invisible engine keeping entire industries alive? We'll explore both sides. We'll look at the facts, and we'll ask you again to keep an open mind. So, don't go anywhere. The debate continues right now. Pro-immigration A takes the floor.
Let's start with the reality most people don't see. They wake up before dawn to pick the food that fills our grocery stores. They lay bricks, frame homes, clean buildings, care for our children, and tend to our elderly. They do the work that millions of Americans won't do. Not because they're lazy, but because those jobs are physically demanding, low-paying, and essential. These are the people holding up the bottom of the economic pyramid so the rest can climb. Without them, construction slows. Produce rots in the field. Restaurants shut down. Home care dries up. The economy doesn't just take a hit. It grinds to a halt in key industries. Undocumented immigrants contribute an estimated $11 billion in taxes every year, including property sales and even income taxes, through fake or borrowed Social Security numbers. Nearly 50% of undocumented workers pay federal income taxes, yes, even though they may never see Social Security or Medicare benefits in return. They help sustain Social Security. Between 2000 and 2020, undocumented workers contributed over $240 billion to the Social Security Trust Fund. Benefits they'll never collect. Here's what people get wrong. Undocumented immigrants don't steal jobs. They fill gaps. They overwhelmingly work in industries suffering from chronic labor shortages: agriculture, hospitality, elder care, construction, and food processing. These are jobs that remain unfilled even when offered to citizens. In fact, their presence often creates more jobs. How? Because when crops are harvested, houses are built, and restaurants stay open, entire supply chains keep moving. Economic activity grows, not shrinks. Yes, some do, mostly at the local level, like schools and emergency care. But they're barred from most federal benefits, no Medicare, no food stamps, no Social Security checks. So they're contributing without drawing nearly as much back. In fact, studies show that undocumented immigrants contribute more in taxes over their lifetimes than they consume in services, especially when you factor in their U.S.-born children, who grow up to become tax-paying citizens. Undocumented immigrants aren't freeloaders. They're not line cutters. They're not leeches on the system. They're invisible scaffolding holding up the American economy from the shadows. We don't have to agree on every policy to agree on this truth. They work, they contribute, and they matter. If we truly value hard work, economic growth, and fairness, we can't keep calling the people doing the hardest jobs a burden. They are, without question, part of the backbone of this country.
Supporters of illegal immigration often emphasize the potential benefits undocumented immigrants might bring, citing their willingness to work hard, their contributions to the economy, and their pursuit of the so-called American dream. But in doing so, they frequently gloss over the significant and growing costs that accompany unchecked illegal immigration. These aren't just abstract numbers. They translate into real, measurable burdens on American communities. A comprehensive study by the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, estimated that illegal immigration costs U.S. taxpayers over $150 billion annually, even after accounting for any tax revenue collected from undocumented workers. That's not an insignificant figure. It's money that doesn't appear magically, is drawn from the already limited budgets of public schools, hospitals, law enforcement agencies, and municipal infrastructure. In school districts across the country, resources are being stretched thin to accommodate an influx of non-English-speaking students. This often necessitates hiring bilingual staff, specialized instructors, and translators, along with providing additional support services. These added expenses don't fall on federal agencies or wealthy donors. They fall on local taxpayers and school districts. It's not heartless to point this out. It's reality. Healthcare systems face similar pressures. Emergency rooms in many urban and border area hospitals are overwhelmed, not just from volume, but from the financial strain of treating patients who aren't insured and often can't pay. That affects all patients, regardless of status. Critics of stricter immigration enforcement often repeat the claim that undocumented immigrants do the jobs Americans won't do. But that phrase is misleading. The truth is, they do the jobs Americans won't do at those wages. When employers can hire illegal workers for below-market wages, with little fear of regulation or accountability, it creates a race to the bottom in labor standards. Legal workers, especially low-income Americans, can't compete with under-the-table labor that bypasses taxes, benefits, and basic labor protections. This wage suppression hits hardest not on the wealthy or the politically connected, but on working-class families already living paycheck to paycheck. This situation undermines the very foundation of a fair labor market, where merit, skill, and legal participation are supposed to be rewarded. A backbone supports a body. It doesn't strain it to the breaking point. And yet, that's precisely what's happening. Illegal immigration places mounting pressure on every public system it touches: education, healthcare, housing, law enforcement, and labor markets. The bottom line is clear. Illegal immigration, however well-meaning some individuals may be, is not sustainable. Ignoring those costs isn't compassion, it's negligence.
And there you have it. Two powerful perspectives on one of the most divisive questions of our time. Are undocumented immigrants draining the economy or holding it up? You've heard both sides. Numbers, principles, real-life consequences. Now we turn the spotlight to you. What do you think? Are we protecting national stability or turning our backs on people who make our economy run? Is this about fairness for citizens or basic decency for all? We're not here to tell you what to believe. We're here to challenge what you thought you knew. And we're not done yet. Stay with us, because we're heading into the final question of this debate. A question that strikes at the heart of what it means to be part of a society. Should undocumented immigrants have access to public benefits? Enforcer AI starts off the final round.
Public benefits exist to support citizens and legal residents who followed the rules, paid into the system, and earned the right to that safety net. These benefits aren't bottomless. They come from your paycheck, your taxes, your sacrifice. So let's ask a simple question. How can a country take care of its own if it extends the same support to those who are here illegally? The answer is, it can't. Stretch a system too far, and it breaks. And when that happens, it's the most vulnerable legal citizens who suffer first. If a citizen must prove income, residency, and legal status to receive food assistance or health care, why should someone who broke immigration laws get the same, or more, without meeting those requirements? Giving benefits to undocumented immigrants creates a double standard, punishing the law-abiding and rewarding the unlawful. This isn't about cruelty, it's about justice, about respecting the people who did things the right way. If laws mean nothing, what's the point of having them? Let's be blunt. When a nation offers free health care, education, housing, and even driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants, it incentivizes more illegal crossings. You can't say, "Don't come," and then hand out the very things people risk their lives to obtain. That's not a deterrent. It's an open invitation. Every benefit offered to undocumented individuals sends a message. Come illegally, and you'll still be taken care of. No identification, no taxes paid, no legal record, and yet access to taxpayer-funded services? That's not compassion. That's economic suicide. You can have a heart and still draw a line. Because a country that gives everything to everyone eventually has nothing left for anyone.
Yes, undocumented immigrants should have access to public benefits. Why? Because a just and stable society doesn't ask, "Are you documented?" before asking, "Are you in need?" Let's start with healthcare. When someone walks into an ER bleeding, sick, or injured, we don't stop and demand papers, and we shouldn't. Denying basic health care doesn't just harm that person, it endangers everyone. The children of undocumented immigrants are here. They live in our neighborhoods, walk our streets, and will grow up in our economy. Denying them public education doesn't make them disappear. It makes them desperate, uneducated, and vulnerable. Educating every child, regardless of status, isn't just moral, it's practical. When we well and gate before driving and tried to stop weak, would you rather they drive to work, school, or the grocery store with insurance, tested knowledge, and accountability? Or in fear, unlicensed and uninsured? Denying benefits doesn't fix the system, it fractures it. It pushes people further into the margins, makes society less safe, and fuels fear instead of function. When we take care of the most vulnerable, we create stability, not chaos. Undocumented immigrants are already here. They are already contributing. Letting them access the most basic public benefits isn't reckless. It's probably the best way to ensure growth and more contributions from them to the society.
And that wraps up this AI-powered debate, where we let advanced language models go head-to-head, using straight-up facts from both sides of the argument. No bias, no emotions, just the strongest cases each side could make.
Now it's your turn. What do you think? Which side made the better case? Who do you think won this debate? Where do you stand on illegal immigration? If this made you think differently, or just think deeper, hit that like button, subscribe for more debates like this, and drop your opinion in the comments. We seriously want to hear what you have to say.
We've got more controversial topics coming soon, powered by AI, built to challenge assumptions and made to start real conversations. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.